Hey kids, howdy, and welcome to yet another episode of Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox, coming at you for November 6th through the 12th, and the close of eclipse season.
Hell yeah.
Woohoo! Which actually, yes. Actually doesn't really complete itself until the 13th. That's the next new moon. That's a Monday. There'll be an episode of Conscious Embodiment that will drop on Monday the 13th, where we will start by talking all about that new moon, because it really is a significant moment, right? We've come out of eclipse season with it, and we start the next lunar cycle. So this week, November 6th through 12th, we're fully still in the eclipse wormhole. Venus and Mercury are going to both change signs, so that's big news in the mind and the heart in terms of the archetype that sort of reflect how we're processing our feelings and communicating. And there's a kind of a subtle but powerful healing opportunity this week that has to do with what Venus is doing in this last week of a lunar cycle that was also an eclipse wormhole that was completely ruled by Venus. Let's break it all down.
I gotta say, there's a good amount of people really going through it in my life right now. So I just wanted to say to the listeners, you got this. We have one more week in this eclipse cycle. You can do it.
That's right, baby. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it really, I personally am having an easy breezy time of this, because the geometry of both lunations hit me in a very direct and positive way. But you're not kidding, Zoe. There are people who are really tripping out because it's an incredibly tense time. It's so deep in its magnitude. And I think it's the Venus sort of action of the last 6 months and this lunar cycle that is why it's emotionally so challenging while we're moving through this wormhole. And so there might be, there might be some good news for y'all. The fact that on the 8th of November, this Wednesday, Venus is changing signs and moving into her ruling sign of Libra. And that will bring with it a level of emotional harmony and balance, more direct expression of love and beautiful reflection in our relationship experience, because it's like Venus is coming home. That said, Venus has been very, very busy, and she will, be doing some work in her home turf. And there's some healing energy that plays out this week that I want to talk about a little bit later in the podcast. But understand this. Venus will be in Libra starting on Wednesday, November 8th. She spends about 3.5 weeks in a sign. That means the entire rest of the month, she will be in her ruling sign of Libra. This is wonderful for us because our emotional bodies have just been all over the place. Venus has been so active and busy this year, especially because of her protracted stay in Leo, where she did a retrograde, helping us all kind of become more deserving in our hearts, willing to sort of get really clear about just how much love we feel we deserve and want and desire. And then the lunar cycle comes along, that's eclipse season, and it's completely ruled by Venus. Right? The new moon was in Libra, the sign that she's moving into on Wednesday, one of her ruling signs. So the whole lunar cycle, that is this eclipse wormhole that we're in, is designed to get us in a more harmonious and balanced relationship with love in our hearts. But also, Venus being the emotional body and Libra being one of her ruling signs, another thing that's possible with Venus moving into Libra that doesn't have to do with like who you're dating is that all of the world is our beloved. We have a relationship with the outside world that we experience through our hearts, through our feeling body. And Venus in Libra offers us the most beautiful version of what it's like to look out at the world, feel the feelings that are in your heart, and find the love and the beauty of that what is happening inside of you is being reflected back to you in your outside world. And Venus in Libra gives us the most beautiful lens through which to work with the idea of the mirrored consciousness. So when Venus is in Libra, it's actually easier to say, oh, that thing out there, that relationship, that circumstance, that thing I got to work myself through, I wish felt better or looked different. Then we turn within and say, well, where is the reflection of this inside of me where I can actually control how I'm thinking, feeling about my life? And then we make the adjustment on the inside, and then Venus in Libra has it show up on the outside. It's the old idea that if you're standing in front of a mirror and your outfit is wrinkled, you don't pull out the iron and press it up and down the glass. You actually have to take your outfit off and iron it.
Yeah.
And so Venus in Libra starting on Wednesday is the perfect expression of this. And the transits this week, especially Wednesday when Venus changes signs through Friday and Saturday, offers us the last healing experience of the wormhole. So when I say Venus is moving into Libra on the 8th, that does not promise that all will feel well and yummy and lovely in your heart necessarily. It does mean that we're in a better position to not only feel the love and harmonious balance in our hearts, but actually make the adjustment on the inside and allow it to show up on the outside more directly. And the transits that are coming are going to make this a week where we're all engaged in some inner process of letting something go based on the healings in the heart that we've been through. And I'm guessing that Venus moving into Libra on Wednesday is perhaps that final piece of shift that we all need to actually let the thing go that we've been working on releasing this entire eclipse season. So let's talk about the week up ahead. And I'm going to start with the idea of something that the moon is doing on Tuesday and then again on Sunday. And that is an inconjunct with Chiron. Now, this is my favorite angle in astrology, kids. I talk about it all the time, how much I love the 150-degree fork in the road geometry when two bodies pass each other in the 150-degree angle. So the moon is our insides, our unconscious. And if the moon is going to hit Chiron, the great healer, in the fork in the road inconjunct on Tuesday from the sign of Virgo, which is Chiron's ruling sign, that means that on Tuesday we've got like an announcement of healing's about to come. Get ready to exit the freeway of wound in the direction of more healing. And that starts with this little lunar aspect. What's interesting, and why I'm bringing this up, this one tiny little lunar aspect that happens on Tuesday isn't really meritorious of a whole segment of a podcast talking about astrology, but it's like the first slice of bread is this inconjunct from the Virgo moon to Chiron on Tuesday. And the other slice of bread is that by Sunday, the moon will have moved into Scorpio, the sign of transformation, transmutation, and death and rebirth, all the way down to the level of, utter change. Does the same angle, hits Chiron in the great eliminator angle on Sunday. That's the other piece of bread. And in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about all of the little all of the sort of, transits that happen in between Tuesday and Sunday. But the theme is letting go of wounded spaces in the heart based on spending months in the process of becoming more deserving, Venus retrograde in Leo, and this crazy lunar cycle that's been an eclipse where both the new moon and the full moon were ruled by Venus, the planet of love. So there's two juicy little bits of traffic this week, one of which happens on Wednesday and the other ones which occur both on Friday and Saturday. Now, you can think of this as the week ahead, or you can think of this as, two little events. One that happens on Wednesday, one that happens a few days later. Let's talk about the first one now. So Wednesday is a juicy day. First and foremost, let's start with what the sun is doing, because the sun describes our conscious awareness. Because the sun is in Scorpio, everything is about change, transformation, death, rebirth. So if you've got the sun in Scorpio, where we are aware of how much we are changing and sort of willing to surrender to the deep changes that are going on, and that sun is going to reach over to Chiron, the healer, in the great eliminator angle, then we are consciously aware of a new direction we can move in because of healings that we've been engaged in. You can think of Chiron as being the holder of the healing process, both the generator of the stuff we got to move through that puts us in the way of healing. But then Chiron is then also the holder of the healed spaces inside of us, where we then, because of the healings we've been through, get to see the road ahead in a new direction that will be in the direction of a healed heart, attracting more love. So that happens on Wednesday, and that sets us up to be consciously aware of stuff that sometimes is unconscious. And that's the value of any transit that involves the sun. And in this case, it's very specifically shining a light on the new path that might take you into a new place because you make decisions from a greater place of healing in your heart. But it's not enough to just be aware of something. If Mercury's not involved, then we can't use our minds to help and guide and direct what we're experiencing. And if Venus doesn't come into the picture, then anything that we're aware of isn't dropping into our hearts. But fortunately, on Wednesday, both Mercury and Venus are engaged in some helpful, valuable transits to take what the sun is showing us to a deeper level of actual change, healing in the heart. It starts with Mercury, still in Scorpio, holding a sextile with Pluto. This is gorgeous because Pluto rules Scorpio. So you've got Mercury in the sign that Pluto rules while holding this productive geometry of 60 degrees with the Lord of the underworld. So not only will we be more comfortable in the lower depths because Mercury's in a sign where he's comfortable talking about the deep stuff, by connecting with the planet that holds all of the hidden, all of the shadow, all of the power and authority issues that if we leave them in the unconscious become struggles, but as we drop into our shadow, we sort of become, we then own our own passion and gravitas because we're not shrinking back. So Mercury in Scorpio sextiling Pluto in Capricorn gives us the ability to go deep with our minds. So what Venus is adding to this picture that makes the middle of the week a potential big track change in a healing way is that by virtue of moving into Libra and at the 0 degrees of Libra, Venus is hitting Saturn, who's at 0 degrees of Pisces right now. And that's also the great eliminator angle, the 150-degree inconjunct or quincunx. So now you've got Venus, who's finally coming home to her ruling sign of Libra, saying, I am ready to love out loud. The first thing she does is bump into the great teacher that says, whoop, wait, stop. There's lessons that have been going on, especially during this lunar cycle, and we're not out of it. So Saturn's going to demand that we drop some wound this week. Wednesday might be the triggered awareness of what needs to be dropped rather than the experience of the release itself. That might be something that plays out over Friday and Saturday. But we will certainly, and I'll just sort of wrap up all of these 3 transits with some, general descriptive language for Wednesday. We will be aware of the wounded spaces that still need our attention, Sun in conjunct Chiron. We'll be ready to perceive and or talk about it at an incredibly deep and courageous level, Mercury sextile Pluto. And we are being driven by the heart's desire to release some wound, and the great teacher's going to demand that we do so. So I don't know, maybe we're saving the best for last, kids, because Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th are a little rock'em sock'em. And then Monday the 13th, we complete eclipse season and kick off the next lunar cycle. But not before a bit of an experience as we move into the weekend. So let's break it all down. It starts with Mercury changing signs. So on Friday, Mercury, who is currently in Scorpio, is going to move into Sagittarius. Now, Mercury's very unhappy in this sign. But part of that is that Mercury rules 2 signs as well, Virgo and Gemini. There is an astrological sort of law that says a planet in a sign that's opposite a sign of their rulership is called detriment. It's a detrimental place for Mercury to be when he moves into Sagittarius. I like to describe these things archetypally, not through the rules of astrology, partly because I like to break a lot of the rules of classical astrology if they don't match well with my modern sensibility. The reason why Mercury is unhappy in this sign, and by the way, he'll be there through December 1st. So for 2.5 weeks, from this Friday to December 1st, our thinking, our communication, and our perceptions are going to be challenged by just too much data.
So do we just get lots of info and it short circuits, or?
Yeah, that's actually perfect way of describing the possibility. We'll get lots and lots and lots of information. And depending on what that information is and how we're oriented on a given day, we might be overwhelmed by all the thoughts. We might be unable to find a clear path ahead if we're overwhelmed by all of the considerations. Like mutable fire, that's what Sag is. Mutable means moving, fluid, shifting, changing. Fire, meaning combustible, lots of intensity in fire signs. Mutable fire is like fire that's out of control because you don't know where it's going to go. Now put that sensibility into the mind and the perceiver. And yeah, we're overwhelmed by information when Mercury's in Sagittarius, and that can be problematic. Now, when Mercury moves into Sagittarius and hits 0 degrees of Sag on Friday, remember where Saturn is. 0 degrees of Pisces. another mutable sign. Mutable energy means changeable, not solid. No foundation in mutable energy. Squares are the conflict and obstacle geometry at the center of all geometry. Squares are fighting with each other. I always use the floor and the wall to symbolize this, to analogize this, rather. The floor and the wall are fighting with each other, and neither can win. The floor says lay down, the wall says stand up, and in this case, it's Mercury going to be thinking, talking, and Saturn going stop. There's a lesson. You're thinking too fast. You're moving too quickly. So big lessons will be part of Friday in our thinking and perceiving and the need to have conversations, but we're not exactly being given yummy, smooth energy. For that, it's actually the energy of challenge in communication, perception, and interaction with others. At the same time on Friday, Mercury is going to sesquisquare Chiron. So marching orders from the teacher saying big conflict on Friday, and the wounded spaces open up as if a little bit of salt is being poured into them.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the nature of the 135-degree angle. It's weak. It can't do anything. It can't make anything, and it can't break anything. That's my favorite way of describing the sesquisquare. But it's a geometry of bother and frustration and agitation. And so if it's Mercury, it's about perception. If it's Chiron on the receiving end of the transit, it's about our wounded spaces. So wounds will be agitated, and we will need to talk about it. And talking about them might be difficult and frustrating because the teacher is like right on your ass, sitting on your shoulder, demanding the highest level of thought, perception, and communication you can muster, while feelings might be also like up. And then the very next day on Saturday, so these should be thought of as sort of happening together, though they play out over 48, not 24 hours, Mars will oppose Uranus. Mars in Scorpio puts us in the way of intense action, movement that goes deep, choices that are transformational, even just moving through the world as Mars sort of reflects our physical body. In Scorpio, we're likely to take more risk, to be more sort of in abandon with choices we might make. Uranus holds the most destabilizing and disruptive energy in the solar system. An opposition is the geometry of undeniable impulse. Two objects that oppose each other have to do something. They got to dance or swerve or crash. So you've got a powerful, aggressive, potentially angry energy on Saturday, which could also create fights, accidents. Move slow over the weekend, kids. You want to buckle your seatbelt and pay attention to the rules of the road. Literally, move slow. My daily Astro Alert for Saturday will definitely be giving you a warning that accidents are possible, like physical, literal accidents. But if you put these two transits together, outside of the physical warning of Mars is opposing Uranus on Saturday, definitely move a little slower and with safety in mind. The intensity that the body is going to feel between these Mercury transits on Friday and the Mars opposition on Saturday, sparked by what happens on Wednesday with Mercury and Sun and Venus sort of putting us in the mode of being aware of work that needs to be done on wounds, you've got a big, juicy week ahead. Awareness on Wednesday, potential conflict on Friday and Saturday. And I wish I could say to you guys, and here comes the beautiful release and relief and the button on it. But it ain't there, kids. We just slide into a new moon in Scorpio on Monday, where we will be, setting intentions for change and transformation in the Scorpio kind of way. I don't have I don't have the happy ending to offer you, only the what comes when we honor our process and our shadow work fully. And we sort of end the podcast in the way that we began it, Zoe, where you're acknowledging that people in your immediate environment and perhaps yourself have been through the ringer in this eclipse
Absolutely.
cycle. And we are not done. Yeah. And we've got a last bit and a last hit of it that could be quite intense Wednesday through Saturday. If I say anything, I'll leave you all with, we got this. We are resilient beyond reckoning. We are making changes in our hearts so that we might actually create a world and lives that are fuller and more capable of bringing us our heart's desire, both individually and collectively. And this work is just so important. When we heal our hearts at the individual level, and there are more people, literal individuals on the planet who aren't at war inside of themselves, then we might have the potential for creating peace for humanity in the outside world. But it starts with all of us turning within, doing the deep shadow work, allowing the healings to take us where they need to go, and then just with courage and abandon, do the work. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have a call-in dreamer calling from Los Angeles, our hometown. Hey Tara, what you dreaming?
Hi, thanks for having me on your show. I am calling today with a dream I had 2 nights ago. My dream started in, of all places, a college campus that was not my own. And I was walking towards the ocean because the college was situated on the coastline. I was going to scuba dive, which is something that I've done for the first time this past year and have been doing throughout the
Ooh.
year. In any case, I was going into the water to scuba dive and I kept sinking to the bottom of the water, which is not typically what happens because you will typically float. So this isn't like an abnormal occurrence, something that would not be expected and was, I think, somewhat challenging or threatening in the context that it was happening in.
So the dream had some emotional
Yeah, I think
content with
that
that.
there was like like when you sink like an anvil when you're meant to float, it's of concern, I think, in your safety.
Yeah, yes.
I don't know exactly how I transitioned from this part to the next, but I was back on this campus and walking along like through the halls of the buildings and my legs became increasingly heavy, so heavy that I had to use both hands to like lift my legs one at a time to keep moving forward. And eventually I was in a kind of open space where there was tables and boards set up that kind of looked like what you would expect to see at like a school science fair. And um the I think that I was meant to have a presentation that I was unprepared for. And so not only was I like physically limited in movement, I also wasn't able to like present what I was expected to.
Yeah,
And
right,
then
right.
the other very memorable piece was that to like relieve the tension in my legs, which was preventing me from moving, someone like helped me with like sticking needles, like many needles into my legs, and then removing the needles,
Hmm.
and then like excreting a black substance from my legs. So not like blood or flesh, but just like some sort of like black matter. And so then
Yeah, a little
my legs
muck.
started to like reduce whatever swelling or inflammation that was weighing them down. And then I was able to move. And that is more or less like the arc of my dream.
The arc of the dream. Wow. Juicy dream. Tell me about scuba diving and you. Obviously, it grabbed you. You tried it for the first time recently, and then you indicated that you've been doing it a little bit.
I dove for the first time at the beginning of the year in January, and it's something that I've done several times since then. And one of the things I really enjoy about it is the kind of weightlessness of your body and your ability to float and equalize and just move like you're floating through space,
Yeah.
but underwater. And it's actually a very like physically liberating feeling. So the opposite of having that kind of like physically liberating feeling is to be like cast down to the bottom of the water like an anvil.
Right. There's a surrender in that image. The idea of just surrendering to the float that the first part of the dream sort of indicates, right? That there's something beautiful about it. I've never done any scuba diving, but I certainly have seen lots of media images of it, and I've
Mhm,
snorkeled a little bit, right? So
mhm.
I get that experience of surrender. And that was a positive sensation in the dream
No,
because
I was
of the
thinking.
sinking piece.
Yeah.
Got it. So the dream is definitely about something you're learning at this time, right? Because you're on a
Hmm.
college campus.
Hmm.
So college campus tells us as the opening setting, all right, what's Tara learning about, right? And
Hmm.
it's got to have something to do with processing emotion. You're at the
Hmm.
coastline, you're near the ocean. And in symbolic land, that's about consciousness is the land and the unconscious and the emotional unconscious is the ocean, right? In fact, that's
Hmm.
why so many movie dreams take place on the beach. In fact, literal dreams take place near the ocean, on the beach, because it's
Hmm.
such a rich symbol of both being
Hmm.
consciously aware, but also able to be in our deep emotions, right?
Hmm.
So there's something interesting to me that in the emotional context of you, it's just too heavy. You float. So there's some message about there needing to be some attention on being in some acceptance of the emotional content that you might be going through right now. Right.
Hmm.
And then we have this other image that has a very similar sense of the anvil heavy floating is a little bit like the heavy legs that can't move well.
Hmm.
Right. So, like, I look at that piece of the dream as reflecting your current challenges, since this is a current dream, with like how to move through your world right now powerfully with speed and efficacy on your feet. That then the first scene of the dream tells us that there's something about emotional surrender that's a little bit scary. Then we got this science fair piece. Like, that to me seems mental, right? Science, thought, education, projects. There's a lot of mentality in a science fair. So now we've got emotionality in the ocean, physicality with your legs, and mentality with the science fair that you are not prepared for. Right. So then this becomes a kind of a dream of like stress of I'm not prepared for what life is shoving at me at this very moment. That's got me heavy in my emotions and sinking under them, unable to move effectively and make like quick decisions. And then the dream ends, though, with this not only this healing experience. I do weekly acupuncture. So if I hear a dream of somebody having needles up and down their legs, I'm thinking, ooh, acupuncture, healing. Did it have that evocative sense in that part of the dream?
Yeah, in my dream, having needles inserted into my legs didn't feel painful or frightening. It was just part of what I needed to
To do.
do
Got it.
to
Got it. Well,
relieve
yeah,
what
whatever. That
was.
just scene 1 and scene 2 led you inexorably to scene 3, where it's like,
Mhm,
okay, now, and I'm going to add the dimension of healing because you
mhm.
sort of indicated that it was something necessary. I'm adding the acupuncture, right? It's not my dream, so it's not really my right to do that, but you didn't seem to object. And then there's this black substance that comes out that helps, right? So then the black substance has a meaning to reflect the heaviness inside of you that's weighing you down at this moment. Now, since this is a fresh dream, what what do you think the dream might be talking about in your life right now that you're trying to walk through things but heavy in the legs? You're trying to feel what you're feeling, but it's a little overwhelming like an anvil falling to the bottom of the ocean. And trying to figure out what you know and what you're smart about, but you're not prepared there either. But there is clearly some healing going on. What do you want to say back to me based on what I said to you?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that interpretation. I think that it resonates with something very specifically going on in my life right now. I think I am learning and unlearning positive and negative relational patterns. And
I love that.
part of that is, yeah, like intense yearning for information and control, but also an acceptance and
That's right.
resignation of being
Surrender and
able
it's
to,
risky. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
to do that in relation to anyone or anything else.
I love that. First of all, your language of I'm learning and unlearning is gorgeous, right? Because both are happening. We're learning new ways of relating through intimacy and courage, but we're also unlearning how to relate this based on patterns that we were handed that maybe aren't serving. The
Mhm.
best news of this dream, Tara, is the black crap that's taken out of your legs. Because though the dream is presenting a conflict and a crisis, it's also telling us that the solution is already engaging you.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
terrible language, but you like you're already in the solution.
Mhm.
And it has something to do with allowing a healing to occur. You said it yourself in that this is what I know I have to do next, right? So the dream isn't saying go find an acupuncturist. Although if you want one, I live in LA too. I've got a great clinic to refer you to. No, but the point I'm trying to make is that you are in crisis and solution both in this dream.
Mhm.
And so the black color, even, that's just a perfect shadow image, right? That we're in something we didn't know about, that's heavy, that's blocking us down, that you are looking at, willing to look at, and willing to go through whatever it is you have to do. And what that is exactly what's next, as you said. Which is, one of the things I think that people struggle with all the time when they're like, I don't know what to do next. It's like, your life will show you. Your life will tell you what the very next thing to do is. How's it going? How's that healing process going?
I think it's very difficult. And it is actually much more painful and visceral in real life, but I think in the dream,
Yeah.
it was much more abstracted.
Well, but what I love about the dream is that the dream is indicating success, though the process is deeply uncomfortable.
It's not as though I'm actually having anything like inserting needles all over my body and or even but I think that yeah, maybe it is the emotional equivalent to what that maybe indicates or looks like
Yeah.
in the dream.
Well, and hey, what I'll do is project again my image. If this were my dream, needles in my legs would mean acupuncture. Then, if we just accept that for the moment to make the point, that there are needles in your legs in your dream means that there is a part of you that knows that technology, that understands a healing modality that your conscious awareness might not know. But there it is in the dreamscape. It's not my acupuncturist's dream, although I'll find out. I'll see him this Thursday and ask him if he had a dream about treating a young woman with needles in her legs, right? So there's a part of you that doesn't make an appearance in the dream, but does so in the what I call the ipso facto. Like if there the needles are, that means there's a part of you that understands exactly what's needed at this time. And I'll throw one more thing out there with my projection of acupuncture. Acupuncture is a brilliant healing modality, and it takes time. It's not a quick fix. And you're in a healing that also takes time.
Mhm.
Mm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you you called in.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.